my ass off.
Well, that's you and me both. My schedule went from 30 some odd hours a week to a lot more. A lot more than that.
I think I put in 70 hours last week.
And plus all the traveling with the training and everything else. It's the story of the working man. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm one of your co-hosts and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation, Frank. I'm not too fat for Uber Johnson. And to my left is my esteemed colleague and well-respected constitutional expert, Michael Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. Mike, how's it going, buddy?
It's going. It's been a rough couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was in Jersey, as you know. And last week, because of how late I got home from work, I unfortunately didn't make it. So I'm a few weeks behind.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever really adjusted to the schedule change or not, because we used to come on Saturdays at 9 o'clock, and then we came over onto Wednesdays, and the Wednesday at 8 o'clock seems to be, we're getting a lot more engagement on the channel, but unfortunately, one of us seems to always wind up running late, one way or the other. And
Well, Nick and Michael are both running late tonight. They'll be on later. It's hard.
And Jan is out in, I believe she said Arizona, taking care of some family issues this week.
Yep.
Jan, if you're with us and you see us, we're wishing you and your family the best. You're always in our prayers and our thoughts, and give all love to everybody out there on the West Coast. But I tell you. So apparently last night there was a State of the Union address.
Yeah.
Did you catch much of it?
No, actually, I didn't because I was working. Like I said, I've been putting in some crazy hours. When I started in the shop that I work at, there were 3 system techs that worked there and 4 installers and a bench tech. We are down to 2 system techs and a single installer now in the shop, and we are doing more work than we were then.
Well, what's the cause of the debilitated manpower? Is that just corporate layoff? Is that attrition?
This industry has always been extremely shorthanded. Ever since I've been in it. And unfortunately, we've had some other people move on to other occupations, and trying to get them replaced is extremely difficult. We've also had several that have retired and so forth. So it's just extremely hard to get people to replace them.
I mean, well, as much as your job is, most people would classify you as blue collar because you're in a truck, you're on a tower, you're using tools and stuff like that. You still have got a tremendous amount of technical knowledge and expertise that far exceeds what most people would consider blue collar employment. When you're dealing on a mental level with what they would probably consider something white collar, but the physical aspect blue collar. So you got a powder blue collar, and I guess not a lot of people are cut out for that kind of work.
Now, a lot of the people would have the skill sets that are needed in my industry tend to go into IT rather than go into where I'm at. Because the skills I have to know what IT knows, plus I have to know what radios know or have knowledge of radio frequencies and that stuff. So I actually have to know more than an average IT tech does. But yet our industry tends to start off lower than what entry-level IT techs start. So we end up losing a lot that way.
Me, I'm just glad that where I'm at right now, I'm kind of just being able to use my expertise without having to. But I'll tell you, it's funny. As much as I know about stuff in the Second Amendment community, is as much as I don't know
Right.
about stuff. There's always somebody in my line of work that you can learn volumes from,
Mhm.
and it's just it's it's humbling. Here I am. I do this stuff my whole life, and
Right.
I'm still learning about. I've never been a shotgun guy. Okay,
Yeah.
I've had shotgun for home defense. I mean, if I ever went skeet shooting or trap shooting, I was doing it with a riot shotgun. I wasn't doing it with some fancy over and under and all the rest of this stuff. And shotguns is a completely new realm for me.
Yeah.
With the exception of like a semi-automatic competition style shotgun that you just hit and steal targets with when it comes to clays and everything. I'm learning about chokes and and the variety of chokes that are out there and the thread patterns and the choke volumes and all the different calibers that the shotguns are geared at. And I sit and I look at some of the shotguns that we have in the shop, and I compare it up against some of like our really high end ARs that we have,
Right.
and some of our high end ARs at $2,000-3,000, for a really good AR. Then I turn around and I look at some of these shotguns, and I'm like, there's two barrels. There's not even it's not even rifled. They want $4,000 for these things,
Oh yeah.
and I'm like, my God! I mean, I knew that it was an expensive sport, but to see what they get for some of these things, and I can't wrap my head around it. And then I sit and I say, I have no problem dropping $2,000 on a handgun, but I scoff at the idea of dropping 500 on a rifle. Sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, there's just because I say, oh, I don't know, it's such a diverse field that I'm in,
It is.
and I just thank God I don't have to have more of a technical background on it, other than understanding how to run the computer to do the 4473s. Yeah,
Uh,
Roadhammer says he doesn't use a choke. Mossberg 500 pump action, you can hear it on the next mountain. Well, we move quite a few of those a day actually out of the store. The Mossbergs. I mean, that's probably the most popular shotgun in America is the 500. But some of the stuff that we have in there, it's just they're these magnificent brass and black chrome and engraved, and they're just ridiculous. And you look at this big long shotgun and think, oh, that thing's going to weigh like 15 pounds, and you pick it up and it's like 2.5 pounds. It's like lighter than any of my other rifles. So like, holy
yeah.
crap! Yeah, it's a different world. But I think we've been getting even with SHOT Show just recently under our belt.
Right.
I have not I have not seen anything down the pike in the handgun or rifle world that has been exciting anybody. I mean, there's a couple of things that people are been clamoring to get their hands on because it's a new offering, but I haven't seen anything really that innovative
Yeah.
on anything, and it's getting kind of mundane. It's getting mundane.
Well, it is. And I think right now a lot of people are waiting to see what ends up happening with the tariffs and stuff like that. They're looking to see. There are several state initiatives that are coming out that could have some broad-reaching impact. And Mexico is trying to set up suits against manufacturers, and that's
Yeah.
going before the Supreme Court here soon. And if that is allowed, that's going to change a lot of dynamics. I think that's kind of what's ebbing a lot of the innovation in the industry right now.
Well, Well, still, the whole Mexican lawsuit is just bullshit from day one. You know, they're holding manufacturers responsible for what criminals do,
Right.
and it's a horrible precedent that you would even think that. But
Well,
you know, I see that, but even still, I think what I'm seeing more than anything else in the gun community right now is the Glock killer. Every new gun that comes out has for the last 10 years. Oh, this is a Glock killer. It's a Glock killer. Well, you know what? Glock is still there because while Glock's Generation 3 patents expired, everybody jumped into saying, okay, how do we make a Gen 3 Glock and
right.
make it a little bit better? Glock's on Gen 5. You know, they're not that much different than the Gen 3, you know, but everybody's saying you can't kill Glock by making a 10-year-old version
You can't
of the
kill
of the
Glock by
Glock.
copying Glock.
Right. You got to come out with something completely new. And we've been moving the Ruger came out with the RXM or RMX, whatever the hell it is. It's a compilation between Ruger and Magpul, where they're going to make their version of the Glock 19 Gen 3. And I'm like, there's nothing to write home about.
No.
There's literally nothing to write home about. Everything that they did, Shadow Systems did 3 years ago. And I don't see where anybody is coming out with anything new, anything innovative. I mean, I have two things in the pipeline that I've been working on right now. That I have a friend of mine who's a manufacturer. We've been kicking around a couple ideas that we're going to try and think about doing something different. And even still as different as what I'm thinking is still not earth shattering. You know, but where are the innovations? Now, you say the courts. I mean, I don't think the gun manufacturers are going to give a damn about what happens with Mexico. You know, unless of course they get held financially liable for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that could be a potential. Another thing is that could end up being is if Mexico's lawsuit is allowed to go through, then that opens the door for states to start suing.
Well, we already had the one. We already had the one from Pennsylvania last year with the gun manufacturer didn't want to settle because it had nothing to do with it, but its insurance company decided to settle.
Right.
And the insurance company decided to take the hit on it. And I think that was political reasons. I think what they wanted to do is just figure out how not to insure these gun companies anymore. So they figured they would take a hit. It would be easier for them to take that hit and wash their hands and walk away, saying we're no longer going to insure these companies. You know, and in the long run, they win. But still, I don't see standing. And that was one of the questions I did, because I've been watching some of the transcripts from the Supreme Court and what some of the judges have been asking, and the questions that the judges have been asking don't look favorable, you know, to Mexico.
No, the only way Mexico could really entertain a suit of that nature would be to run it as a class action suit for its citizens. Okay, and in order to do that, you have to have a primary defendant to begin with, and they don't have that.
Yeah, you can, because otherwise it's a consortium. Well, we're suing 5 different people. Well, what gun was used to kill your so and so?
Right.
You know, you can't do it. Joanna had a question here. She says, hey, Frank, how do you find the age of a gun? Joanna, most of the time, the age of a firearm can be looked up through the serial number. If you look up the manufacturer, if you go to Google and say Colt, for instance, you can put Colt serial number index in, and a website will pop up, and you'll be able to go to the manufacturer, enter the serial number, and it should be able to give you some of the pedigree of that particular firearm to tell you when it was manufactured. Not all firearm companies do that. Sometimes you'll have to find a forum where the number of the on the serial number, a specific sequence will refer to a specific year. Uh, it all depends. If you want, I can possibly help you. If you want to send me whatever information that you're looking for, if you wanted to send me the make and model and serial number of a firearm, I can do the due diligence for you and see if I can set it up. If you want to send me an email at frank@l1f.us, I can do my best to try and find something out either here, or if I go up to work, I can look at my firearm Bible and see what we can find out for you.
Let me jump in
Put
real
up
quick.
on screen Colt's serial number lookup. So if there's a Colt, you put in the serial number of the weapon, and it will give you the serial number, the model, and the manufactured year.
Hey guys,
Hey, what's
just wanted to jump in, and sorry I was a little bit late. Had to take care of my puppy, and it's raining here in New York City, so he was running a little slow. So I apologize for that. It sounds like we're talking about a couple of the Second Amendment issues in reference to the tariffs, specifically towards Mexico. Is that right?
No, actually, we're talking about Mexico's lawsuit against gun manufacturers and whether or not the Supreme Court's going to let it proceed. Right now, Mexico's trying to hold gun owners or gun manufacturers accountable for the crime that's happening down in Mexico.
It's very much like I'm catching up here, so you may have addressed this already, but very much like the attempt that was made 6 years ago to sue gun manufacturers here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Several states were involved in that lawsuit, including New
Yeah.
York State, and it failed, got thrown out.
Right.
Because you can't. It's like saying, okay, because the psycho, Dwayne, I forget his last name, who ran over a bunch of people during a Thanksgiving parade in Waukesha, and he was using a vehicle. Oh,
Yeah.
well, does that mean we have to now sue all the car manufacturers? Of course not. He misused the firearm.
It's like,
the weapon.
okay. And that'd also be holding car manufacturers accountable for people driving drunk.
Exactly. You can't. It would destroy any industry. You can name.
Okay.
What
And
about the kids eating the Tide
once
Pod?
you open that door, that Pandora's box,
well,
whether it be with guns or some other implement, you
Well-
open the door for every manufacturer to be held accountable anytime there is a death involved where that item that was manufactured was involved.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
the
why
Tide
don't-
Pods when kids were eating those,
Right.
and that's not Tide's fault.
No.
So this lawsuit with Mexico is just gonna fail. It has to. Go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry.
do you want to just ask you a question? The 44 Bulldog was actually a cartridge. Was manufactured in the late 1800s to late 1930s. Was the 44 Bulldog was a cartridge itself. You might know other cartridges like the 44 Special, 44 Magnum, or are you speaking of the 44 Bulldog, the actual revolver by the name that was made by Charter Arms? It's still being made today. If you want to clarify that with me, I can be more than happy to help figure out what it is. Now, if you have a firearm that takes the 44 Bulldog cartridge, that I'd like to see, because that's gonna be an old girl, and she's probably gonna have some years on her. So that I would like to see that.
Okay. So Michael,
quick
I know
note.
you watched it. Unfortunately, I did not catch it because I've been working a lot of hours. So why don't you give us the highlights of the State of the Union address, I know that there were several Democrats that not only left the State of the Union address, but they also had several that were escorted out.
Well, it was very interesting. So, yes, I saw the whole thing. I was watching it live. I was also my friend Larry Sharp, friend of the channel, Larry Sharp, a libertarian. He was doing a live stream on it. Everybody was live streaming this because it was huge. This is bigger than the Oscars, huge ratings. And I think that you'll see President Trump will get about a 5-point bump in his approval rating. We're already seeing that several groups, I think CNN did a poll on those under 40, and Trump was running about 60% approval for the speech yesterday. Now, a lot of people will say you'll see SOTU, SOTU, in a lot of the social media, which stands for State of the Union. It was actually a congressional address. The first time that a newly elected president, speaks to Congress and the nation, it's called a congressional address because he hasn't had a full year in office to present the State of the Union. He doesn't know what it is technically, and therefore he does a congressional address about his plan for the State of the Union. This was a longer one. Trump was on 2 hours, and that was long. One of the longer speeches in history, recent history.
Well, this is from CBS News. Okay, and CBS News is not a Trump fan by any stretch. And this is their poll.
Yeah. And I've seen similar numbers from many polls, but the point is, yeah, 63% for those who are just listening. Party identification of the speech watchers, 51% Republican, 27% Democrat. Speech made 68% of the people, this is including the Democrats, hopeful. 54% felt proud. Only 16% were angry, which matches what we would expect to see from the far left.
Yeah. And 27% worried.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
See, this is all indicative. And again, this is coming from CBS News. This is coming from the left. And they're acknowledging what everyone else acknowledged, that regardless of where you politically stand, the agenda that was voted for in November 2024 is what we are getting. We often hear a lot of politicians right now, a lot of the news media right now are saying, is this what you voted for? And overwhelmingly, the majority of the American people are saying yes. And that's what this speech was about. What I took away from this speech, I thought was really important. This was a speech that wasn't targeting politicians or donors. This was targeting American citizens. It was saying it's all right to be an American. It's good that America is a strong nation, that the priorities of America are important to the world and to ourselves, and it's all right to feel good about being American. That's the whole speech. It was another way of saying it is it was a heartstrings speech, that he was speaking to Americans and their future, that he has been paying attention to the issues most Americans are talking about, and he's offered solutions to most of the issues Americans are talking about, and that he's looking to the future for America. And Democrats hated that.
Well, they absolutely hate everything that Trump's doing right now.
Well, it's here's the thing that you may have seen the clip of this at the very beginning of the speech. Trump says the Democrats are not going to stand, they're not going to clap, they're not even going to smile, no matter what I say. We could go to Mars, I could cure cancer, and they won't acknowledge it. They won't celebrate it, no matter what he says. And that's what he's dealing with. And then a little bit later, you had a young girl who was injured because of men in women's sports, and she received brain damage because of it. There was a young boy, 13-year-old, which is very popular right now, and people have seen this clip of the 13-year-old who was supposed to die 6 months after his diagnosis of brain cancer. He's now 13. He outlived the diagnosis by about 5 years. He's 13. He wanted to be in law enforcement, and he became a member of the, I believe it was FBI, an honorary member because of Trump right then, right there. And Trump signed a bill protecting young women, and he signed it during there. That's heartstrings. I hear the American people. I hear the problems people are talking about at the water cooler and with their friends. He heard us, and he is reacting to it. And we have not heard a speech like that in the 57 years I've been on. Well, maybe to an extent, Ronald Reagan in the 80s. Honestly, it was that kind of speech, reaching to the people. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Democrats have been so angry about it. Hey, Agent Black.
Well, Democrats all day, I've been seeing different clips talking about how horrible his speech was and so forth. And that's not what America's saying.
Only the politicians are saying that it was bad. And that's only because they don't agree, because they were embarrassed. He called them out directly. He pointed out exactly what they would be upset about. And he also didn't shy away. And I got to tell you, the live reaction I was watching from libertarians, a libertarian channel doing the libertarian coverage of the event live. And
this is some of what Trump had to put up with.
go ahead. No, that's Ro Khanna. We'll get into that. And not Ro Khanna, that's Al Green.
Al Green was escorted out of the speech.
Right. And I'll get to that in 1 second, because it kind of goes in line with what the libertarian, well, I was seeing in a live libertarian, so not right, not left, third party. And they were saying, yeah, some parts of the speech were petty, but they liked it. They enjoyed it. It was because it was reflecting their concerns. Even people, and many of them did not like Donald Trump as a person, but they liked the speech because it was the issues. He was actually dealing with them, and he wasn't being bashful. He wasn't being diplomatic about it. He was just being upfront. Again, something that people aren't used to. Now, at one point, Al Green, the image you just showed, at one point, Donald Trump said, this is part, and this is early into the speech, that Donald Trump said, I've heard the mandate from the American people, and we're living up to that mandate, talking about in the last 43, now 44 days, all the things that he was doing in terms of transparency, in terms of ending waste, in terms of getting away from the woke, ever more left-leaning ideology in our laws. And that's when Al Green stood up and decided, hey, my answer is, he said, you don't have a mandate, because now the numbers have been adjusted after the election, and Trump is now under 50. He's at 49.6%. Like anyone cares. Like that actually makes a difference. But he's like, no, you don't have a mandate. You didn't get 50%. Which, remember, these are the same Democrats who had a complete fit when a Republican member of Congress spoke up once, shouted out once during a SOTU, a State of the Union address. They thought that was incredibly disrespectful. Here's a representative standing up, screaming.
That was Joe Wilson.
Yep. Thank you.
And he said, you lie.
That's it. He said those two words, and they lost their minds. That was news for a week. Here's Al Green. He stands up. He's defying the president during the speech. He stopped the speech, literally, because of his actions. When he was told by the Speaker of the House and the Vice President to sit down, they were willing to just move on. Rather than comply, rather than be respectful, diplomatic, whatever you want to call it, time and place. No, he said, I refuse. He was ejected, which was exactly what he wanted. He was virtue signaling. His whole goal was to get kicked out. so he could raise money. He achieved nothing, and he looked bad. And that's that moment where he's
Well,
there saying, "I
listen,
will not."
he's not been happy since he lost his job as the Geico caveman.
Yeah, there was an immediate media backlash, and very much people were saying, even a caveman has something to say, and or that the caveman should go back to playing with rocks. I saw a lot of comments like that, and I can tell you that in the live stream, and I listened to voices besides left and right, so that's why I was listening to libertarians, and Larry's my friend, and no one was on Al Green's side. Everyone instantly realized, and this is in the comments, this was from Larry, who was commenting live at the time. Everyone recognized the reason why he did this is so that he can put out an ad saying, "See, I stood up to Trump. I'm such a great guy." He achieved nothing, but he's going to do ads that are going to say, "You need to give me more money. You need to reelect me. You need to vote Democrat because I'm such a strong guy. I'm
standing up against Trump."
That's it. And when Republicans said, "You lie," oh my God, that was the sin against the universe. But a Democrat does it, and it's fantastic. And this is why they decided that, and that's why you saw the numbers so high, because the American people agreed with Trump, not Al Green, not the Democrats. And Trump then goes on to highlight line by line by line waste and useless regulation and useless programs that we've all talked about that have been part of the reason why we have a $36 trillion national debt. And I mean, including things like he brought up, and a lot of people have talked about this. Let me clarify it for you about the Social Security. It is a fact that the Social Security Administration is aware that there are over 10 million people who are over the age of 120 that have active Social Security numbers at this time. We know this because there was a report in June of 2023 under the Biden-Harris administration where they highlighted the numbers of over 18. The actual number is over 18 million people are over 100 years old on the Social Security number. Most of them over 120 years old. 140,000 of those individuals are actively having incomes right now. That's a part that no one talks about. 140,000 people who are somewhere between 120 and 360 years old are drawing an income in America right now. The argument from people like Chuck Schumer is, "Oh my God, but none of them are getting checks." Okay, how do you know that? We have a Treasury Department that, because of transparency, we now know said yes to every single check, whether it was going to a terrorist, to a fraud, it doesn't matter. They said yes and paid out. This is part of USAID and other departments. They paid everything. If they got a bill, they paid it. Even when they knew it was corrupt, it was fraud, it was for terrorism, they paid it. So you can't tell me the Social Security Department isn't paying those people. On top of that, those active Social Security numbers, that means somebody could use that to register to vote. Those could be active voters. Go ahead, Frank.
I'm gonna throw one more at you. How many of those in that active age group that are possibly and more than likely receiving checks are just shell? We know that's a shell. We know it's a shell person. It's a non-existent person. How many of those people are actively donating to Act Blue?
We don't know. Again, and that's my thing to Chuck Schumer. He's saying it absolutely didn't happen. Wait a minute. But we've seen that the government is paying terrorists. They are paying fraud. They're actively doing things that are wasteful and useless. And we've never had the audit of the Social Security Administration. So they knew in 2023 these people existed. And they did nothing about it. And you mean to tell me you are 100% sure that even though they know there's no 200-year-old Americans that they didn't get rid of them. Is
Here's
there
the
any reason for that?
transcript.
Go ahead.
Okay. 3.47 million people from ages 100 to 129, 3.9 million people from ages 130 to 139, 3.5 million people from ages 140 to 149. I
Typo,
think
yeah.
that's probably what he meant. Ma'am, and money is being paid, many of them. We are searching right now. In fact, Pam, good luck. You're going to find it. But a lot of money is paid out to people because it just keeps getting paid, and nobody does. And it really hurts Social Security, and it hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159. Over 130 people, according to the Social Security databases, are over 160 years old. We have a healthier country than I thought. Bobby, applause. Including, to finish, 1,039 people between the ages of 220 and 229 years. One person between the age of 240 and 249. One person is listed as 360 years of age.
That's the oldest.
More than 100 years older than our country.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about when you're going through it. And he made a reference to RFK Jr., which he would later in the speech talk about Maha and trying to make America healthy again. So he did address him. He mentioned Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, that's looking into these issues. But here, again, I have to say, this isn't new. This has been baked into the government. No one has ever looked at it before. No one has ever told the American people. There was a report in 2023. The public did not get this report. No one knew to look for it. No one knew it existed until we had the transparency. Trump is living up to his word. We're getting more transparent. We've been promised transparency forever. Remember Obama? I'm going to be the most transparent president ever. Did you get any of these details under the Obama administration? No. Did you get it under Biden? No. Did you get it under the first term of Trump? No. But we're getting it now. And the part of the reason why so many people are shocked and why so many people are upset and why Democrats are so upset is he's actually doing what he said. Regardless of whether you like Trump or not, meaningless. He said he'd be transparent. This is transparency. This is revealing what we are wasting our money on and the problems that are built into the system. And we have people, workers, so many workers that are only there to push paper. Oh, there's someone who's 360 years old. America didn't exist 360 years ago.
Well, listen,
I used to keep going.
Well, I'll tell you how a lot of that happens. You guys know I used to do a lot of security work. And worked for a lot of who's who and, various people. And it was something I learned very early on in security work. And that was actually over 25 years ago when I had to take people and put them on airplanes to deport them. And I'm walking around in major airports. And I learned a long time ago that if you walk around, if you're well dressed, walk around with a clipboard and a walkie-talkie, nobody will stop you, no matter where you go. You can walk anywhere you want if you have a clipboard and a walkie-talkie in your hand, because if nobody knows who you are, everybody's afraid to ask who you are, because everybody's like, maybe that's somebody important. Maybe that's us. So when you wind up having all of these people that they see things that they know aren't right, they're just not going to ask questions because they don't know who put that ball in motion. And they don't know whose plan they're going to be disrupting. So a lot of people just will not ask the question. It's better to just turn your eye and say, like, oh, I didn't see anything. And this is how it perpetuates. And then you have the people that knowingly participate in these kind of frauds because they've been told to participate in these kinds of frauds. And that's their job. And because they've been instructed to do it, it doesn't matter whether or not they are doing something wrong, because as far as they're concerned, they're doing what they were told. So that makes what they're doing right. Regardless of the legality, illegality, or morality of it, they're just doing what they were told. And we can go back through history and see how many atrocities have been committed by people who say, I was just following orders.
Yeah.
That is one of the classic problems. And there wasn't just that. There's also, when we're looking at the speech, another thing I thought that was very telling for American people. We know what's going on with the Ukraine. We can talk more about that. That ongoing this weekend, the abomination that was Friday, and the shakeout since there. But Trump made one line in there I thought was very important. He goes, "So, what do you want? Do you want me to fund the Ukraine for the next 5 years?" Which would mean continuing to have a war, continuing to fight the war that's been going on for the last 3 years, having thousands upon thousands of people die in a war that, regardless that I do not like Russia, I do not trust Putin, I have a very good understanding of Russian politics. I've lived in Moscow, I've lived in Tbilisi and Riga. I understand how the people feel about that because I was there for a year and a half, not a week, not a vacation, year and a half, living there every day. And I can tell you, they're very concerned. And he said, some of you, the Democrats, want to fund a war for another 5 years.
Yeah.
When peace is possible right now.
And that's what got them to clap. Of all the things that he was saying, was
Yeah.
like, they'll never smile, they'll never stand, they'll never clap. And then sure enough,
They clap for that.
I mean,
You're right.
They clap for the death and destruction of a people. Yeah.
By the way, folks, Dow
Good
just
job.
joined us, so that's cool. And yeah, you're right. They clap for let's have 5 more years of war, which at this point is now on the edge of trying to convince the United States to put troops on the ground. That's what we're hearing from France. That's what we're hearing from the United Kingdom. They want troops on the ground. In particular, they want American troops, whether under NATO or any other format. They want American troops on the ground for the next 5 years. I'm going to give you a second, Frank. Give me 1 second to finish the thought. And Senator Elizabeth Warren, who Trump referred to as Pocahontas, was
Yeah,
clapping.
Pocahontas.
Yes. See, she does want that. And the camera, I was watching C-SPAN, instantly went right to her, and she was clapping for 5 more years of war. She was clapping and agreeing with the idea of funding war when peace is possible and an end to the war could save lives. And she would rather continue to have the war just because Orange Man bad. So I'm sorry, Frank, I cut you off. Go ahead.
To anybody who wants American troops there, 2 birds for you. I'm going to send you 2 birds. These are the 2 birds that you could have. What is wrong with these Democrats? Did we not see for 12, 13 years with our war on terror the toll that was taken on American servicemen and women, both in the price of death and injury and being maimed and had post-traumatic stress disorder and everything else? Do these people not realize that war is not just, it's not a board game?
No.
You're talking about forget about even sending American troops there. That's not going to happen. But just the fact that there's kids there in the Ukraine, they don't want to be conscripted into fighting for their country, because a lot of them don't believe in the war that they're fighting for, because they're being kidnapped off the streets in order to fight the war.
Yeah.
The Russian kids that are over there, that are in the trenches, they don't want to be over there fighting this war. These are people with egos sending children off to die. And you have American Democrats who just think it's fine if we keep funding it. Listen, Ukraine cannot win this war. It doesn't matter how many troops they send in, doesn't how much money they send. They cannot win the war. The best they could do is possibly fight a 10-year stalemate and then maybe guerrilla warfare
I would
after
say
that.
I would disagree. They've already lost. The war is over. They had
Oh, yeah.
for 6 months they
But-
had a chance, and the war is now just in a war of attrition,
Right.
which means they lose.
Look, the war right now is a matter of Russia clearing out, the inexperienced fighters, and the Ukraine having to literally having to kidnap off the street any men who are of fighting age and forcing them to fight, or putting them in jail if they don't. Ukraine cannot win. Why are we fighting a war that cannot be won? And rather than going to a table and saying, listen, enough with our children dying in the street. I'm getting really fucking sick. They're not my people. I don't speak their language. It doesn't have no bearing on me, but I'm getting sick and tired of seeing kids waving red flags and white flags in a ditch saying, please don't kill me. I'm hurt. I'm injured. I don't want to fight. This isn't my war. And having a drone flown at them and blowing them to pieces.
See,
When they're waving a flag, I'm tired of seeing Ukrainian kids getting blown up when they're waving flags. I'm tired of seeing Russian kids who don't want to fight having their own Russian guns turned on them and killed because they don't want to fight. I'm tired of seeing Ukrainian kids getting killed by their own people because they don't want to fight. This is a no-win situation for the Ukraine, and it's a very costly situation for Putin. But Putin doesn't care what it costs.
Well, it's a little more than that in terms of Putin's point of view. And if we are actually looking, and I've been following this since day one of the war for 3 years now, I've been covering this every week and many times before. Putting aside Putin, he has an agenda. He has a goal. He's a intelligent, evil, yes. That's how he got to be in charge of the KGB. You don't get in charge of the KGB because you're stupid and you don't know how to make a plan and you don't know how to execute things over time. The problems we're seeing today started in 2013 when Obama allowed Russia to go and take the Crimea. And this is the natural progression of that. What we're seeing with Trump right now is trying to end that. One of the biggest things, and he brought it up in the speech, he's brought it over the weekend. And I don't know how the Ukraine didn't get this. I don't understand how Democrats don't get this. The best guarantee is the United States. We're going in to build out, to mine the rare earth metals that we need. For everybody who believes in green energy, we need those rare earth metals. If you believe in defense of the United States, we need those rare earth metals. So the United States will go in to get those metals. That means we have to build the infrastructure. That's good for the U.S. economy. That's good for the Ukrainian people. They get to have water, electricity, and housing. We get to have a stimulus to our economy. We get to mine the rare earth metals. Ukraine gets money that they can't generate on their own because they don't have the technology, the personnel, or the infrastructure. The United States, again, gets another boost to our economy, and we get a guarantee for the future of having the metals we need for electric batteries and for solar panels and for wind. And here's the kicker of it. Russia won't attack, because if they attack, then they're attacking Americans who are working there, and they don't want a fight with the Americans because we would be directly, if they attack American citizens with a strong president in, we will respond, and they know that. They will never attack while Americans are on the ground building up roads and hospitals and water pipelines to take care of children and building schools. They will never attack with a strong president while that's happening. That is the security guarantee for the Ukraine. Zelensky didn't like that because that doesn't give him money in his pocket. That doesn't give his corrupt government. And yes, the Ukraine government is corrupt. It was corrupt before the war. It's corrupt now. They don't get to have money. American, some of these politicians don't get to siphon off money for this, and that's why they're against it. But that is the guarantee, and I think most
Well-
Americans see that. I'll stop for a moment. I know I'm going crazy here.
Well, let's just look at the two different points of view when it comes from Democrats. Trump says he wants to stop funding the war because nobody wants to talk about peace. So he says, when you're ready to talk about peace, you can come back and then we can talk about what you want to do. He says, I'm not funding the war because of peace. I want you to come and talk about peace, which should be what we are all interested in. I remember Biden bragging quite braggadociously when he was vice president that he was going to stop funding a whole bunch of stuff over there because of a certain politician that he wanted fired,
Yeah,
who
the
happened to be
prosecution.
investigating his family. It was okay for Biden to say, yeah, this is right, and this is during the whole Crimea thing, with Russia annexing Crimea and all of the money that we were sending over there. Oh, we're not going to send you this money because you're investing until that prosecutor is fired. Nobody said a word. That was fine. He basically threatened them with an illegal act over what they were doing that was going to expose corruption.
It's on video. It's on video.
Right? It's on video, and the Democrats think that's fine. But when you have an American president says, "Listen, I don't want to fund anything if there's no chance of us going to get peace here. Let's sit down and let's talk peace." He gets booed. So when did the Democrats become openly? I mean, weren't these the same friggin' people sticking daisies in barrels of guns
No.
at Kent University?
No, it wasn't. That was their followers, not the leaders. The followers believed that. The rank and file Democrats believed that. And some of the
Right,
rank
that's
and
right.
file progressives,
These are
not their leaders.
Right. The ones that you're seeing right now, were the same ones that put the hit out on JFK so they could continue a war in Vietnam, killing American service persons, then having more and more helicopters knocked out of the sky, so LBJ and his cronies could make more friggin' money.
Let me stop for a moment, because now we're covering a lot of stuff, and I don't want to get into the Ukraine. There's more to it. There's been updates, and I've been listening. I've heard the speeches by the United Kingdom's Prime Minister, that is, Keir Starmer. I've listened to the speech by Emmanuel Macron out of France. I've been listening to that and what they're saying, which is very important to the future of America, very important to the future of the world, stability in the world. But we'll get into that. Dal, I know you got in a little bit late. You haven't had much to say. Mike, you've been silent as well. I want to give you guys a chance to comment on. I know, Mike, you didn't watch it, but Dal, did you see the speech?
Yeah, I got to watch the entire thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was glad to see that the usage of the rules to eject Al Green from the building, because that you noticed that everybody else that was starting to get rowdy immediately stopped, and they just pursued their silent protest. That was a very important part, because that showed that we're no longer doing the soft gloves thing with them anymore. There's no reason to. They have nothing. They're a broken people, and so they need to either join us and make America great again, or they need to get out of the way. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. And if they're going to try and abuse their authority, well, there are rules, and they apply to them just as much as they apply to anybody else. And before anybody can say anything about, oh, well, the Republicans just made up that rule, or it's a Republican Congress, so they get to abuse it. No. Those rules are good for 2 years when a new Congress gets into place. So the rules that they're using were from 2023. That was a Democrat House. So, the Democrats have no one to blame but themselves, because they were the ones that added that rule so that they could kick out the Republicans when they booed Joe Biden. So, you know what? You enabled your own ejection. I'm not sorry that we used it against you. These people need to understand, we're done with this. We are a country of rules and laws, and if they don't apply to everybody consistently, then we have no country. and the individuals can't work together to get this done.
All right. So, Frank, you watched it. Dal, you watched it. And to the chat, I know you guys, many of you watched the speech either live or since then. I'm not talking about the clips, I'm talking about the entire speech. And I say, and I believe, that this was the first presidential speech to the nation, and it's whether it's a State of the Union or Congressional Address, where we're hearing a president speak to the American citizen, not the political ideology, not to the party, but to the people themselves. And I think, yes, after 9/11, there was, of course, President Bush speaking to American people. I think that was a key moment. Yes, there was Reagan. When the wall fell down, he was speaking to the American people. And also, right after we got back all the hostages from Iran, 1980. So we have those moments. But since that time, I think this is the first time we've heard a president without a war that we are directly involved in, without the major deaths of American citizens, where we're having a president who's literally speaking to the issues that the American people care about, not the political party. Democrats are all into the political party and the ideology, and they put that on display last night. And Trump is talking to the people. And I think that's part of the reason why CBS is saying he's at 74%, why we're seeing his approval rating go up in the 60 percentile for those 40 and under. These are the target heart of the Democratic Party, these numbers. And they're all for Trump because he was talking to America and saying America is good. Being American is good. And people want to hear, we're tired of hearing we're evil, bad people. That if you're white, according to critical race theory, if you're white, you're evil. And if you're black, you're a victim. If you're Hispanic, you're a victim. If you're a woman, you're a victim. We're tired of that. I think people want to hear otherwise. Dow, tell me, am I missing the boat here? Chat, tell me.
No, you're not missing the boat. And it's kind of surprising to me. One of the things that I noticed about support for things like the Ukraine war that came from an area where I didn't even think would be possible. Mark Levin, the great one, he's been on his show lately going, we need to go into Ukraine and bust Putin in the mouth. And I'm like, you worked for Reagan. How did Reagan beat the communists? By economics, not by throwing punches. I don't understand how guys like Mark Levin, who normally are pretty level-headed and reasonable and moderate, come back with bullshit like that, totally disconnected from what the people are actually calling for. We want Trump to do his deal in economics because that is more lasting than trying to belt somebody in the mouth, especially that somebody if they happen to have nuclear missiles.
Good point. Frank, let me ask you the same thing. Was my understanding of the speech what I think a lot of people are reacting to? Was I wrong?
I want to let Marshall get in here because he's been.
Well, he said he didn't watch it, so that's why I was going to you first. But go ahead,
well, still, you can have an opinion on.
Of course,
on various things. I just don't want to have him shut out.
No, that's fair. Fair. Go ahead, Mike, if you want. I'm sorry, I was just focusing on Sam first.
That I'm actually seeing, and what I'm actually observing in various media formats. The Democrat Party right now is in meltdown.
Yeah.
And they are trying desperately, grasping at any straw that they can find to try to make themselves relevant. And every straw they grasp at, they find out that it's a piece of chaff.
Yeah.
That it has no substance. It gets them nowhere. And it's resulting in them losing more and more in the political realm. The polls speak for themselves. America liked what they heard. America thinks that we are moving finally in a positive direction, where we haven't seen that.
Right.
Over the last 4 years, polls like that all said that we are going the wrong way. They, on pretty much every issue that Trump brought up, 60+% of the American populace agreed with him.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's not normal.
No.
For any president.
And that just proves that Al Green was wrong. You know, when during the speech when he's like, "You don't have a mandate," he's like shaking his cane like a Batman villain. You know, the old guy from Magoo that wants to beat the young guy with the cane or whatever. It's like that. The people have spoken, and you're not part of the picture unless you want to work with us.
I liked Al Green so much better when he was just singing R&B. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think a lot of people on the left are misunderstanding, especially as, there's a way that we can go into the Ukraine. We can provide security. We can prevent Ukraine from being annexed any further than where it is. That we can do this without putting boots on the ground. And we can do this without jeopardizing American lives. And we could actually make a buck off of it while increasing our own national security. And that's called the mineral deal. You see, because if we were to go in and negotiate the mineral deal that Zelensky has now crapped out on us three times, we'd be able to go in there, establish an American presence by having contractors go in, work with the Ukrainians to develop their minerals, bring them to the surface, put them on the market, and then just by sheerly having American corporate interests in the Ukraine and having them protected by a coalition force of Ukrainian troops and NATO troops, if they wanted to become that, then Russia probably would really want to, move in. But you don't want to have NATO any further than where they are now. That's what caused all of this bullshit. Let's go back and just remember why Putin went in and took Crimea in the first place. His shipping industry. Okay, when you isolate ports and you tell Russia, we're gonna move NATO in closer. Because remember, their agreement was not 1 inch closer to Russia was NATO ever supposed to move, and then NATO moved 1,000 miles closer to Russia, basically putting him, in a position where he was surrounding, taking over Vladivostok, which was the Russian warm water port. They kind of pushed Putin's hand into why he had to move against NATO's interest, because they were moving against his. This is from his perspective too. We can't just look everything from our side. You have to look at it from his side too. I'm not saying what he's doing is right, but you have to understand the reasons why. But if we want to prevent any further escalation, why do you think Europe? Why do you has been so relatively secure over all of these times? Maybe because there's American military bases all over the place. Because there's American troops all over the place. Yeah. Maybe if America had a little piece of the Ukraine where we were working out a deal where we could say, okay, we're going to buy your minerals from you at this price so we can fuel our market and stop getting our shit from China. Okay, maybe the Ukrainians can benefit, America can benefit, and then nobody comes beating on your door saying, oh, we're here to annex half your country.
Well, you're right, Frank.
But the fact that Zelensky doesn't want the friggin' deal just tells you one thing. He knows he's pocketing more cash through war than he ever would through peace.
Here's a couple key points. Okay, and I've seen a few different reports on this now. A few hours before Zelensky's meeting
he talked to
with Trump, Zelensky met with some very prominent Democrats.
Yeah.
Right.
And they
And
told him
prior to those meetings with Democrats, the mineral deal was supposedly a done deal.
Mhm.
It just needed to be signed.
Mhm.
And then Zelensky meets with these Democrats and then goes in acting like he's some
He
big boy,
he sabotages the whole thing.
and everything collapses. On top of that, we know Putin is ready to come to the table to start talking peace.
Mhm.
Again, he's already been doing that. Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Zelensky keeps refusing.
Yes. There's a reason.
Okay. And Trump brought it up in that meeting with Zelensky that if it wasn't for the United States giving arms and aid to Ukraine, Zelensky would not be able to continue this war.
More true than he thinks. Here's something that most people don't remember. In the first 90 days, at the end of the third month of the war, Europe had expended all of its ammunition reserves. The United States has been providing all the ammunition for all of the weapons that are being used by the Ukraine. Europe doesn't have it. They can't keep up the pace of manufacture.
They
They
don't.
don't have the capability.
Right.
The United States is the sole source of the ammunition that's been going into the Ukraine because Europe needs to ramp up. They can't do more than 90 days. And
Which
that's
is
how
why I'm
bad-
paying 63 cents for a round of 5.56.
And,
actually that
and
is.
right now, Zelensky, without the United States backing him, Zelensky would lose absolutely everything. Okay. Trump was trying to give him a way out and resolve this conflict, except Democrats don't want Trump to resolve this conflict.
No.
Because if Trump resolves it, then a lot of kickbacks that they are getting, and you can say that I'm wrong on this, but there's only one reason for a war that you're not directly involved in. And that's because you're getting some type of kickback from it.
Well, I don't know. There probably is. We do know that as part of one of the things Ukraine was known for and part of their corruption prior to the war, prior to 2013, was that there were a lot of Americans, political leaders, their children were on a bunch of
Right.
boards where they didn't need to show up and they were making millions of dollars. This is a fact. It wasn't just Joe Biden's son, Hunter. There were many others. So we know that's a place what Ukraine was known for in 2013 and beyond, and before that, was for money laundering and corruption. That's a fact. Doesn't matter if you like them or don't like them. That's just what they were. And what we're seeing in the war, there's two things I think are very important to understand. When Zelensky was speaking to Democrats, they fed into something he's been consistent about. He wants to win. He doesn't want peace. He doesn't want to negotiate a ceasefire. He wants to win. What are one of the conditions that the Ukraine has said under Zelensky, said that they must have for there to be peace? They have to go back to the borders of 2014 before Russia got the Crimea. Russia will never agree to that.
No.
That means you continue to have war. And that's, I understand part of what Zelensky is saying is he has to maintain troop morale throughout this. He has to try and look strong to his troops. Otherwise, they stop fighting and they instantly lose. So there's a little bit of this. I get the posturing to an extent. But when he got encouraged by Democrats that said, no, we will keep funding this, just like Joe Biden will fund this for the next 5 years, the next 10 years. We will keep fighting until you win. Kind of what we've heard from the EU. Keep fighting and we'll keep making sure you can fight forever. Except the Ukrainian people can't. They don't have the people.
No.
They don't have the capability. The reality is he's looking at this from the wrong way. Trump's saying, walk in, we get the peace we can take, not the peace that we want. You can say anything, and I've said this before, you can say anything you want after the peace. You can demonize Putin. You can say Russia is the devil. You can put it on, you could fill up, take some of the U.S. funding, we'll build up a bunch of billboards facing into Russia that says, Russia sucks, Putin's the devil. And we can do that after the peace.
Yeah.
But if there's no
Well,
peace, there is no
here's the
Ukraine.
thing. Okay. We know that Zelensky is corrupt.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, there's countless indicators prior to the Ukrainian war. There's even more now. There's also a real strong reason, and this is going around shortly after the Ukrainian war started, about U.S. biolabs in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that do not want that information out at all.
They'll give some lame excuse that the biolabs were like agricultural study for food-based diseases or whatever. But
if Russia gets control of those,
right,
and finds out what was really happening there, we're sunk.
right.
That's another thing that is going on. Okay, and Democrats only see we've got to keep funding this, we've got to keep funding this because we don't want our dirty laundry aired. Okay, and the thing is there is a path to peace that is non-confrontational on this, and that's the path that Trump is actually trying to go down. And people, the Democrats, do not want Trump to be successful in any stage,
Right.
no matter what it is.
It's a form of rapprochement because if he gets peace for Ukraine this way, right, Trump's smart enough that he could actually do rapprochement with Russia, which I think would be very smart. And the reason I say that is because Bismarck proved the point back in the 1800s when he was balancing the powers of Europe to unify Germany. He said the critical linchpin for balancing powers in Europe was to make Russia and keep Russia as your friend. The reason being is because the Russians won't really listen to anybody unless they think you're friendly with them, and they will only respect people. They will only respect and be friends with people that are strong, leaders that are strong, countries that are strong. They're a type of people that they respect tough love. So if I think Trump seems to understand that, and at some point I bet you that the Democrats are worried that they're gonna settle this Ukrainian deal peacefully, and then the next step is economic ties with Russia. Nothing that's gonna threaten our national security, but he wants Russia to be friends to balance the power so that you can take care of China. Now,
Well,
Russia's not going to be a very good partner in that because they have a very broad border with them that's not protected. So that's kind of hard to do. But if he gets some economic concessions within Russia, say for the rare earth minerals, which Putin has already said, if you invest in Russia, you can have the minerals. You just have to bring the capital to do it. That's smart on Putin's end. But that would be like a limited partnership that would benefit both countries and keep them from going to war with one another.
Well, here's another thing on this. Okay. The absolute only way Ukraine even has a chance of winning is for other countries to actually send troops in.
Yeah.
Ukraine cannot do it on its own, regardless of how many munitions we send, regardless of what type of weapon systems we send, etc. Ukraine will never be able to win, not by itself.
No.
not with Europe either.
So the only way that for Ukraine to be able to win is for boots on the ground from other countries.
Well,
Okay,
I don't know what country is going to be the first to sacrifice their children to this war.
Well,
If Democrats,
that's just it.
if Democrats in America want to step up and enlist their 18-year-olds in the Ukrainian army and send them over as the first sacrifice, then go ahead and do it.
Well, they won't do it in the United Kingdom in particular. Keir Starmer on Sunday and again on Monday mentioned that they're willing to put in troops into the Ukraine as peacekeepers after a peace deal, only if the United States is involved. So notice all the conditions on that. I mean, they're trying to
you heard
bluster. Yeah.
Well, Ukraine, Italian's prime minister came out. The Italian Trump girl,
Georgia.
she one who said, "Hey, listen, if you guys want to send troops, that's fine with me, but you ain't getting none of your money. You ain't getting none of mine."
Yeah,
Right.
that was Giorgia Meloni, the prime minister of Italy, and yeah, she blew up, and she's one of the strongest supporters in Europe for the Ukraine, and she just basically ended the coalition that France and England were trying
And
to put
honestly,
together.
I think if Harris would have been elected, we would be sending troops.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, listen, guys, it's 9:16. We've been trying to figure out the world's problems for the last hour or so. How about we move on to something a little bit more on the domestic front? What do you guys think about Oreo double stuffs not quite being stuffed double like they used to be?
I would say we're in a food crisis.
Well, that is a different kind of change. I was
No, there was-
more.
No,
I was
we
thinking
we had a meeting at work, and somebody brought in a pack of Oreo double stuffed cookies, and the label was ripped. The package was ripped open. I said, "Oh, somebody brought Oreos," and they said, "No, they're double stuffed." So I looked at them. I said, "Bullshit. These ain't doubles." Nabisco, come on, just step up your game a little bit, just a little bit. You think they're regular Oreos. Now you got half the stuffing in a regular Oreo as you used to, and now you're calling your originals double stuffs. We're not stupid, people. Come on, get with the program. Listen, what I wanted to actually talk about on the domestic front was, listen, I you know how we are here on the show when stuff ain't right, we call it, whether it's right or left or whatever.
Yeah.
Epstein files. They made this big hoo-ha last week that we were getting the Epstein list, and here we are. We have a bunch of conservative influencers show up at the White House, all come walking out, holding this big binder up. Binder. Wait, you can't say binder. That's sexist. Well. Anyway, they have this. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a reference of Mitt Romney has binders full of women. No, but they come out with these things that are supposed to get the Epstein list. Bondi said, the list is on my desk, we're reviewing it, and then we're going to share it with these right-wing influencers. And they had a bunch of them show up at the White House, and they all leave the White House with these books of the Epstein's list that is 250 pages of blacked out, redacted bullshit without any friggin' names in it.
That had already been released.
Right. And then Bondi says, and Bondi's like, well, I didn't know what was in that. Listen, Trump, I don't understand what Kash Patel is doing. I don't understand what Pam Bondi's doing. But when the Attorney General of the United States tells the FBI, release the list, have it on my desk, and they send her a booklet, and then she releases it to these people. Did she not look through the booklet before releasing it to these people to see that she was being made a fool of?
She said she did. She said she did, but I think what was happening is she was talking big on the newscast.
All right, well, she's spending more goddamn time on Fox News than she is doing a friggin' job.
Yeah.
And then they turn around and they say, oh, well, we got a truck full of evidence that showed up. I told them Friday, no later than Friday, I want to. So they have a truck pull up. Listen, we're not asking for a truckload of evidence to be displayed. We're looking for the list. You said you were going to release the list. You didn't release the list. You said the FBI is stonewalling you. I don't know. Don't we have a new FBI director in the name of Kash Patel? What the
Yes.
hell is Cash Patel doing? Why didn't Cash Patel go in with 100 U.S. Marshals and say, you're under arrest, you're under arrest, you're under arrest, you're under arrest, obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. No, we had one guy who was stonewalling who was allowed to retire. And
Forced
here
to
we
retire,
are
yeah.
a week after we were supposed to get the list. We still don't have the list.
Yeah.
Now we're being told there's a truckload of evidence that they now have to go through to make sure they're not letting anything out that has anything to do with national security.
Okay. Let me.
We're
What's happening
being, listen, Pam Bondi is not doing her job, and neither is Cash Patel.
Well, I actually I disagree with that. I think that they're being slow walked. This is a tactic. One, she got embarrassed. That was on purpose. There are elements within our FBI, within our government, that don't like Trump or the Trump administration. They don't like transparency. And we've seen this on the first Trump administration where they slow walked, they put in delays and roadblocks on everything that was being done. We're seeing the same thing here. That's why the guy was forced to resign, is because he was in charge of putting up that blockade, slow walking and embarrassing Pam Bondi. Yeah, you have everything. Don't worry. We sent it all. It's exactly what you wanted, knowing full well she would be embarrassed, knowing full well that he had truckloads of information. And they send the truckload of information before Cash Patel walks in with agents to go through all of their evidence, so that now you have to sift through it and try and find out where's the actual information you need, which will, of course, be in the last box that they ever receive, that they ever get to look into.
All right,
It's slow walk.
All right, but here's the deal. If I'm in charge of a department and I tell the department, I want this information, okay? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure I get the information before I go on television and tell the American people I'm going to release it on a such and such day. I'm going to have the information in my hand, in my possession. It's going to be verified. It's going to have gone through 100 times to make sure that everything is perfectly the way it's supposed to be. And I'm going to say, okay, here's the list. I'm now going to put it in this copy machine, and I'm going to print off 10 copies, and I'm going to hand it out to various people and news sources so it can be disseminated to the public. I'm going to verify that I have my evidence before I present it to the American people, instead of saying, I'm going to present it to you on Friday and then wait for somebody else to screw me in the ass on Thursday. So then I have nothing to show on Friday. She had nothing to show. She didn't do her due diligence. Everything should have been prepared before she made a promise to the American people. And let's not forget, it's not her promise to the American people. This is Donald Trump's promise to the American people. He signed an executive order saying he wanted the list released. And she said, we're releasing the list on Friday to these people, and they got 250 pages of blacked out information. Okay, now all that tells me is they're taking more and more time to protect the people that shouldn't be protected.
Well,
They're covered.
again, my point isn't that you're wrong.
Listen, I don't give a shit if Jesus Christ is on that list. I don't care if Buddha, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, I don't care if Donald Trump Jr. is on that list. I want it friggin' released, and I want everybody to be able to explain why they were there and what they were doing. That's what I want. That's what was promised to the American people, and we're not getting that. And we're not going to get this list. Meanwhile, there's one person who's not even gone through jury trial, but pled guilty to charges. She's sitting in a prison in New York under protective custody. She knows all the information. She's not being offered a deal to come forward with what she knows. The other one is dead. And nobody else is saying anything. But we have a list of women who have all gone and testified that they were trafficked, they were abused, they were raped, they were kidnapped, they were tortured. Nobody can name these friggin' people, and nobody is going to jail. I don't understand this. These are children. These are American children, children of foreign nations. God knows how many of them are dumped in the oceans off of that friggin' island that their parents will never know where their remains are. We have no idea what happened to these people, and all of the evidence is sitting there. We're promised it, we don't get it, and there's no reason for it.
Again, Frank, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I believe that the core problem, again, it's not coming from the Trump administration, although Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have failed in what they were supposed to do. They got embarrassed, rightly so, because they trusted that what they were told from their juniors, their subordinates, lied to them. And some of those people have been publicly named and fired. And there are others who are smaller that are being early retirement out that no one cares about because they're unknown names. That's happening. But that's part of the problem, the transparency that we're going through right now, that people are trying to block it. Yes, go ahead.
But this is part of the problem I had with the Trump administration the last time. They walked in and they relied on keeping 75% of the people that were there. Instead of firing everybody and getting rid of them and starting over with people you could trust, they relied on people that were there. That's why we had, what was Jeff Sessions and all the rest of these other swamp creatures. He didn't drain the swamp. He added more water to it the last time around. Now, this time we're saying, oh, well, they trusted the people that were there. They're not learning from their mistakes. They didn't learn from their mistakes. It took them 4 years to learn. It took an election to get stolen, and here we are 8 years later, and they still haven't learned their friggin' lesson that you can't trust these people. That's why when I said before this election was won, I want Trump to go in and burn it all to the ground. Burn it all. Fire everybody. Fire them all. Because as long as you have one stitch of corruption, one stitch, you're going to have somebody who's going to have the ability to hold information back from the American people. He's got to burn it all down. And Patel not going in right off the bat and saying, I'm going to ensure that this list is delivered. I'm going to ensure it's not redacted. I'm going to ensure that it's not edited. This is what we got. So now, instead of getting the list a week ago like we were supposed to, when are we going to get it? And nobody's talking about it anymore. Why? No. Because everybody's talking about the goddamn the address last night. Everybody's talking about the blow up in the White House on Friday. Nobody's talking about the fucking list anymore.
Well, no, it's
not going to be 6 months before anybody gets around to caring again.
If the list
will be,
the list even exists. The thing is that there's like one of the members in the chat points out, there's logbooks, there's addresses, there's address books, logs, and videos. Anything that you can use to blackmail, that's what they're going to have. But the list is even if there is a list, we may not be able to read it. I mean, if you're going to be doing something illicit, are you really going to write out this is John Doe, blah 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 blah? No, you're going to have it in code so that you understand it.
Well, John always says he disagrees with me. The people are still talking about it. Yeah, John, you're right. People are talking about it. People like me, people like you, people like us, we're talking about it. But the people who give a shit, us, we don't carry any weight. The people that are protecting the people on that list, they're the people that carry weight, and they're not talking about it. They don't care, and because maybe they're protecting somebody. I don't know. The longer it goes, the longer reason we have to believe that we're all getting the shaft. Meanwhile, you got that Gazelle, whatever the hell her name is. She's the linchpin to the whole thing. Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the linchpin. She knows the list. She's got everybody who was there. Why hasn't she been brought into Congress yet to testify? Why hasn't she been brought in to say, listen, we're going to ask you some questions. You're already serving 40 to life. What more do you have to lose now? Maybe cut a deal. I don't know. We cut deals with the worst offenders on the friggin' planet to get information that doesn't mean anything. Meanwhile, how many friggin' children have been gone? And we're talking about all of these kids all the time that are being sex trafficked across the southern border. How many of them wound up there? We don't have any friggin' clue.
I understand. And I understand the outrage on that. There's a lot to be outraged. We are getting most of what you and many Americans have asked for in terms of transparency, in terms of change, in terms of redefining the infrastructure of America. It's happening. And some parts are happening faster than others, and they're screwing up along the way. And we're going to get more of that as we go forward, because you can't tear it all down without things getting messy and screwed up. And yes, this is something simple that they should have been able to get better. They didn't, and
All
we're
right.
calling them
I
out
will.
on it. And you're not the
All
only
right.
one. I understand that.
All right. Let me shrink it down for you. Let me shrink it down for you to explain even why I'm even upset. I understand that this is a geopolitical nightmare, because we know that there's everybody from politicians to royalty, celebrities, and the rich and the rich and the who's and whatever on that list. We know that it's going to get messy. We know for a fact that there's people that are going to be protected from on high. We know what's going to happen. We know that there's going to be blood in the water in every one of the families of all of these big who's to who's out there. But do you remember the drones? The drone thing going over New York and Staten Island and New Jersey, going back and everything. What was one of the things that, let's find out what's happening with the drones and release that information. Let's get that information. Do you remember what the response we got from the White House was 3 days later?
Yeah.
The response was, the drones were authorized by the FAA to conduct research and various experiments.
Yeah.
That was the answer we got. It's not an answer. Who were the drones? FAA drones? What organization was it? Right. What organization was it that the FAA gave authorization to have hundreds of drones flying over New York, New Jersey, Staten Island, and all over the tri-state area? What were the experiments? What was being conducted? What were they looking for? We were given no information. That's not transparency. Telling me that the FAA authorized the flight paths doesn't tell me anything.
I understand.
It doesn't tell me anything. So if they're going to hide something like that, I have a real problem with their alleged transparency, because they're not being transparent.
We're never going to get 100% transparency. It's a government.
We're not getting 5%, and that's not what the American.
The fact that we're not getting 5% is still exponentially more than what we've gotten before. And yes, it's imperfect.
Yeah, I understand. I understand it's better, but I'm really getting sick and tired of being handed a crumb and being told to be happy.
No, I don't want us to be happy as is. I want this to be a process that continues to move forward, and I think it is moving forward. And I know there's problems with it, but that's why we have this program. And there are other programs out there, but this one in particular, where we address these issues for people who aren't paying attention because they're watching Housewives of Who Gives a Damn and some, bouncing the ball game. It doesn't matter to the majority. We're the ones who are speaking up, and the more people who like, share, subscribe, who join us, who make comment, I guarantee you politicians are paying attention. We've got like 300 people watching this live right now. That hit somebody's radar. They noticed that we're talking about this. They're watching how many people are commenting on this. They are counting that. I know for a fact that many politicians do count these numbers. That's why this is important. It is getting more. But again, this has been 43 days. I don't think it's forgotten, but I don't think it's also, and with due respect, I don't think it's the most important issue facing America right now, the Epstein list. Do I want it? Absolutely. Do we need it?
No, you see,
here's the
thing. But here's the thing, Vass. This is what you miss with what you just said. Yeah. You said, I don't think this is the most important thing pressing America. Okay.
Yes.
How do you know if we don't have the information? You have no idea. You have no idea what was being done there, with who was being done there, what lives were being affected there, what deals were being cut there. You have no idea how many things that are fucked up in this world right now were all being discussed there. You have no idea. And unless we know for sure, you can't say that it's not a non-issue, but it's not as important. We don't know how important it was.
A lot of issues that we don't have all the answers on, and we will never. It's a government. There are always going to be issues that we don't have enough answers on. But for me, I'm only speaking for me. I'm not saying I'm not saying you're wrong. I have a different focus. The thing that was very upsetting to me, and where I want to see, I want to see people arrested. I absolutely would love to see people arrested on the Epstein list that deserve it. Absolutely. You know what I also want? Today, there were 3 mayors, Boston, Chicago, New York, and Denver, that are all sanctuary cities that spoke in front of the House Oversight Committee, and they were
Yeah,
talking
Johnson Johnson and Wu.
Johnston, Johnson, Wu, and Eric Adams. Don't forget him as well. We're all there in front of Congress trying to justify and explain what the hell is going on with these illegal aliens, why their cities are justified in or not justified in providing funding, support, material aid to criminals in our country that are directly and immediately impacting and hurting American citizens, both because of crime and also because the money we're spending in New York, 2.69 billion per year, that we're spending on the illegal aliens that could be going to the homeless, to our veterans, to kids who are hungry. There's a dozen different problems that we have, and we're not paying attention or spending any money on any of those because we're instead spending on illegal aliens. Now, for me, what do I want to see tomorrow? There should be an arrest. We already know Pam Bondi has said she's put New York under notice, both Hochul and Eric Adams and the DA. I want them arrested. I want them arrested tomorrow because, and I understand, for me, what is tacit, and this is part of the problem that the Trump administration truly does have. For me, the most immediate issue, I want those governors arrested. I want those mayors arrested of these sanctuary cities that are a clear and present and immediate danger to the American people, as highlighted in the congressional hearing, as we've seen in article after article in each of these cities for the last 4 years. We know this is a clear and present problem. We know that there's over 3,400% increase in the number of terrorists that have come into America because of these open borders, because of these sanctuary cities. And for me, that's the priority. And here's the thing, Frank, part of the reason that there's an impasse right now is that there's so many issues. It's been such a problem, so little transparency in America for so long. Now we have pockets of people. I'm not saying you're wrong. It is important. My priority is dealing with this sanctuary cities, illegal immigration, arresting those governors. Yours is on Epstein because, yes, you could be right. It could be far more internationally connected. I don't know which one's the right answer, but we can't focus on all of them at the same time instantly and get it all right.
No, we don't. No, but here's the thing. I keep going back and thinking to myself that this is the country that pretty much during World War II, the United States saved the world from totalitarianism, from Nazism, from every evil. The United States is the one that did it. We had the ability to do amazing things, and we never said that we could spread ourselves too thin. If we could have enough power to police the whole friggin' world, we should have enough power in our own nation that we could police ourselves. And if we're not doing it to the best of our ability, then there's a problem there. We have the ability to do what's needed to be done, and we don't have the will. And I think the problem is that there's so much corruption, so deeply entrenched in American politics, that the will is not there, because there's going to be too many powerful people exposed, and they're all interconnected. And if you expose one, it's going to be like the old cartoon where a thread from somebody's shirt gets caught on a fence, and the guy runs him before you know it, he's naked. That thread is, we keep pulling the thread, the less and less garment is there to cover the corruption. We got to keep pulling the threads. And we have a nation. We have the ability to do it. We need the willpower to do it. And as far as Bigfoot is concerned, I know Bigfoot. He's a friend of mine. Don't you dare besmirch Bigfoot.
I'm ignoring that person. It's a troll. We have, for people who don't know, we have a troll in the chat. And
we made it big. We made it to the big time, boys.
Yeah, we're not paying
And
attention.
listen. I don't mind the trolls. Listen,
Oh.
trolls have opinions. Trolls can say what they want to say. I don't care. I'll engage with them because who the hell knows? Maybe you find some common ground. Maybe it is something that person gives a shit enough about that they're willing to say, okay, let's find some common ground. I can find common ground with people I disagree with 1,000 times if we're looking to wind up coming down to the same goal, and that's the truth. And if we're not going to be coming down to the truth, then why are you there?
Well, I don't think he's looking this commenter. I don't think they're. We notice.
No,
we
I'm
haven't
not. I'm
removed
not.
them, but I don't
No,
think
I'm
they're
not.
looking for
I'm,
commonality.
well, listen, we're a free speech channel, right?
Yeah.
We're a free
That's
speech
so good.
channel. I mean, people can, what is this? What is it? Better to keep your mouth closed and be thought an idiot than to open it and confirm it.
There
Yeah.
are some people who are like that. That's true.
Yeah.
I want to point out
guys-
though that Quantum's right that the government's run by reptilians and Chuck Schumer is one of the biggest ones. And we know that because he doesn't know how to make a goddamn hamburger.
Of course.
Yeah, the kosher Jew who makes a raw chopped meat hamburger with American cheese on it.
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah.
Mike, Dow, you guys have been quiet. Me and Frank have been going back and forth a little bit. Again,
Listen, I'm
not that we're
I'm just
disagreeing with each other. We're just
no. We just you and I
No, this is
you
what
and I
makes it
have
viable.
Vass and I have equal passions,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're very passionate about what we believe in. We have different techniques and how to go about doing it.
Yeah.
Vass is a chess player. I'm a boxer. I want to walk in and punch the fuck out of everybody. Vass wants to figure out how to corner him. That's the difference between us.
That truly is, and we've known each other many, many years, and people don't realize we've had these conversations. All of you guys, we've had these kind of conversations in person too. So
Yeah.
it's not the first time that we've been back and
No.
forth going, no, but
and Vass and everybody knows I consider Vass my brother. Vass is my brother from another mother. That's the way we are. But we all have things that we care about for one reason or another that may or may not chart as highly on the spectrum of immediacy, but we do care. The things I care about, Vass cares about deeply. The things that Vass cares about, I care about deeply. We just have a different approach on how we're going to go about getting to the facts.
Absolutely.
Right.
It is healthy, but Dow,
But we always
Mike.
got each other's back.
Oh,
I
in a heartbeat.
need chocolate milk.
Mike, Dow, where are you guys at?
It's what us reptilians demand.
Well, I know everybody's up in arms about Social Security and all this other stuff too. That was mentioned in Trump's speech.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and the Democrats are going just absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, because
That
they feel like
we
they're
are
fraud.
going through checking Social Security and that we are going to be getting rid of some of the excess workers in the Social Security Administration. Honestly, as I've said on this show many, many times, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It's unconstitutional, and it never should have been implemented to begin with.
Exactly.
And now we are literally seeing Social Security in its death throes because, as all Ponzi schemes do, they eventually come to a point where they collapse. And Social Security is a prime example of that. There are not enough people paying in to cover what's being paid out.
True.
And it is going to get worse. Okay? Social Security cannot last. I mean, it is literally impossible for it to last. There's a lot of Democrats floating around. Well, we need to take the cap off of Social Security.
Oh, you're talking about Bernie Sanders thinks he thinks that Social Security can last forever, which is just mathematically
can't.
impossible.
It's impossible.
Mathematically
Okay.
impossible.
When it started, there were 6 people paying into Social Security for each person that was paid out of it. We're down to almost 2 to 1.
let's not
paying in for every person receiving out of it.
Well, let's not forget one of the main factors in Social Security for the fact of why they put the years, the cutoff is 62 and 65 for men and women for collecting Social Security is at the time. Life expectancy for men in America was 67. Life expectancy for women in America was 64. So they were under the impression at the time that they would be collecting enough money to be able to facilitate having to pay for somebody to live an additional 2 years after retirement. So they figured, okay, if somebody retires at 65, we got enough, they're going to be dead by 67, so we can afford to do it. That's what the scheme was. But now look at what life expectancies are, and look at how many people are being paid in, like you said, was 6 to 1 back then. You know,
Right.
now it's
2 to 1.
reversed. Right, it's ridiculous. And then look at how many different times Social Security has been rated for paying for various projects that they say it's not. And to reiterate that term, do you remember this term? Lockbox. We're going to put Social Security in a lockbox. That
Right.
was Al Gore. That was him 20 years ago telling the American people that Social Security was being rated for everything but Social Security. And if it was bankrupt 20 years ago, where is it today?
Basically, it's part of the deficit. They're using
Well,
they're
let's
using
see.
borrowing money in order to keep it solvent.
It was either Carter or Clinton. I'm pretty sure it was Carter, but I have to research it again. That moved Social Security from its own fund, which
To a general.
was hands off, into the general fund.
Yep.
And when it got moved into the general fund, that's when they started rating it.
Oh yeah.
But besides the fact that they're rating it, okay, and supposedly they're paying back 2.3% interest on whatever they take out of it, which is ludicrous.
Yeah.
It should be a hell of a lot higher than that. But the fact that they are rating it to begin with, number one, that wasn't their money. Okay. Social Security was supposed to be an investment made by the people for their retirement. It was never meant to be a fund for Congress to utilize in addition to the other money that they wastefully spent. Okay. Honestly, I don't care if you like Doge or if you don't like Doge. The audits that are going on in every aspect of the executive branch is long beyond needed.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this should have been happening generations ago, and it should continue to happen
There should be
from here on out.
there should be an audit like every other year.
You would think.
Okay, it's ridiculous the amount of wasteful spending and the spending that goes on just because that's what we've always done.
You know,
Okay. There are programs out there that I know that have expired that we continue to pay for today, even though the appropriations for those programs expired years ago.
you know, we're spending about $500 million on expired programs and agendas and legislation every year. In 2024, we were $500 million spent on things that don't exist anymore. And that money was then just moved to another thing without telling anyone about it, which is one of the problems. This is why we need the audits. When Chuck Schumer's out there saying, I guarantee no one's getting paid from Social Security that's 200 years old. You don't know that. That's why we need an audit, which we won't do. And it's really says a lot that the people were saying.
I don't care if somebody's only 55, but they're dead and they're drawing Social Security. That's a problem. I don't care what age they're at, whether it's 55 or 155. If they're drawing Social Security when they're dead, that's a problem.
Yeah, but it's just a matter of it's that obvious when you say it's there are 200, it's too obvious that there is an absolute problem, whether they get a check or not.
Some
And-
odd year old person.
Yeah, I know. It's when they get that person there, and that just tells you the system is corrupt and broken, and we need an audit because this didn't just happen this
thing
year.
is-
It's been happening, and here's the problem: we need these audits because if it's happening in SSA, then it's
If-
happening in every
If
other
the
department.
federal government would have kept within the bounds of its authority, we wouldn't be having the Social Security discussion today, right now, anyway.
No, if you look at what you pay into Social Security for the duration of your working life, as opposed to what you anticipate to take out of Social Security once you retire, if you were to take those funds and invest it in a moderately conservative 401k, you're going to have double the return on your investment as you would had you relied on the federal government. Even if you turn around and put it into
It ends up
T-bills.
working out to well over double. It's
Oh,
almost
wait a minute.
5 times.
Well, I'm saying the most conservative one, not even slightly risky. Oh, by the way, that's an Oreo cookie. Okay, this is an Oreo cookie. Okay,
I know why
made
you're
by
going there.
made by Nabisco. This is what they're calling double stuff.
That's
Does
a
that
regular.
look? That looks suspiciously like a regular friggin' Oreo cookie.
No, that is a regular Oreo cookie.
This is a regular one. When we were all kids, we made our own double stuffs by taking off one half of
And
one,
sticking them
one half of
together, yeah.
another, sticking them together. That's how double stuffs were invented. This is not Nabisco. This is not a double stuff Oreo. And by the way, we also know that Hydrox is better than Oreos anyway. So there.
You're funny. You're funny. I did want to bring up
Hydrox. Well, Hydrox came out in 1895. Oreos came out in 1903.
I did want to bring out one. This is Torque. It's talking to us from Canada and suggesting that Canada needs to do their own Doge. I would suggest that for every government in the
Yeah.
world, if they believe in transparency or they say they do. If they believe in individual rights, then they should be auditing their own government. And every government that doesn't, and everyone in the government that doesn't, is hiding it from you for a reason: corruption. I absolutely believe it. I also wanted to bring up Trippy or Try 9P. Yeah, it's Trippy. Okay. Trippy says, can't we take cartel and drug money we confiscate and apply it to Social Security? I thought it was interesting because that's a unique thought. I don't know anyone else who's suggested that before. And to answer your question there, and Mike, you may know this a little better than me, in terms of what I know legally, we can't.
No.
Because it has to do with banking laws. It's not our money. It's not in our country. It may be violating privacy rules of other countries and banking rules of other countries. It's stupid. It's paperwork.
The way
for the most
the
part.
legislation is currently set, money that is confiscated from criminal activity may be used to combat that same criminal activity. It may not be used for other means.
That's the other thing. So that's interesting.
And Joel is 100%. Joel just commented that confiscated funds fuels fraud. And
Yeah.
that's true, because once you're able to confiscate somebody's money under the pretense of using it for something else, you find more excuses for confiscating money.
And that's,
And I can
that's
tell you
one of the
how
things-
how many times have we all seen police wind up pulling over an American citizen? Oh, he's got $3,000-$4,000 cash in his pocket. That must mean that he or she's doing something illicit or illegal, and they confiscate money, and the people never get their money back.
and that's one of the
they-
big problems I have with asset forfeiture laws. Okay, where they confiscate stuff that is quote unquote from criminal activity, but yet they never proved that it was actually gained through criminal activity.
It's just as bad as what happened in Canada, except Canada was the government doing it, but it wound up being the same thing, where the Canadian government, there were protests if some people may still remember, there were the Canadian protests against lockdowns and mandates, and truckers were involved in shutting down their main city. And the Canadian government, as a response, took all their money. There are still people to this day who've never gotten their money back. And it already went to the Canadian Supreme Court, and they found that, yes, the Canadian government did violate the constitutional rights of their own citizens, and those citizens still don't have the money. When you start taking money from individual citizens, it can be for the loftiest of reasons, but there's always corruption because you're talking about millions and billions, and it will disappear very quickly into some form of corruption.
And here's
it will
one of
be
the
illegal.
biggest things here in the United States. Okay, and one of the biggest problems I have with these asset forfeiture laws, there is no due process. Okay, there's an accusation made, but it is never proven that whatever was seized was gained through illicit activities. Okay, I mean, there's countless cars that are seized. There's homes. There's money. There's all kinds of assets that are forfeited, and there is never any proof that it was gotten through illicit activity.
Yeah.
And this money is just forfeited, and these assets are just forfeited, and you have no grounds to try to get them back. You have no means. You have no recourse.
Yeah, because it's your property that's committed the crime, right? The
Right.
civil asset forfeiture.
That's what they're claiming.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
And that's wrong. That civil asset forfeiture and things like eminent domain are just legal means of robbing people of their property, as far as I'm concerned, and they should have no place in government. You can sue for it in the courts with due process, but
And
you know,
most of the
civil asset
time,
forfeiture should not be a
those
thing.
cases end up going nowhere.
Yeah. Real quick, we broke over 305 people watching live. Thank you. We love the audience. You guys are great. Love the chat, all except the one guy. But love the chat. And
Now
you
we
know,
like him too. He helps it with the algorithm.
hey, I enjoy the algorithm boost that one individual who may have something to do with like quantum. They're only useful for getting the numbers up. But anyway, I won't even get into it. But Trippy also wanted to say, well, he's not talking about civilian cash, talking about cartels who are a terrorist threat. Now, I agree with you, and I think everyone may agree. Cartels are terrorists. They traffic in slavery, they traffic in drugs, they use force and intimidation to cause people to do what they want. Some of these Venezuelan gangs, as an example, Tren de Aragua, went into Aurora, Colorado, took over several apartment buildings. We've seen that in New York City. Similar things have happened. I agree. They're terrorists. But the process to deal with terrorist groups is very different than what we see with any other. Again, Hamas is a terrorist organization. We can't just take their money. We can freeze their assets, but we can't take them. Same thing with sanctions. Even right now in the war with Ukraine and Russia, Russian assets have been frozen, but you can't take them. There's a lot of laws.
But here's the thing, okay?
It gets complicated. Go ahead.
Even if it is a cartel and whatnot, there's still due process that has to be followed.
Right.
Okay? And if due process is not followed, then it's wrong. I don't care where it's from.
It is a problem. due process is one of the issues. Corruption is another massive issue. International law is another problem, which is sad that it gets complicated like that. But because I think you're on the right direction. It's an interesting idea. It's a good way to make a deterrent, but it's the other attached problems that we need to address first. I think that's as much as we want to just jump in and say we've got it squashed. If we move too fast, we miss some of the loopholes, some of the corruption that's in there, and we wind up making the situation worse long term.
And the thing is, okay, today we say cartels. Tomorrow we say the branch
Corporations.
or corporations, or I mean, there's the list goes on. Okay, the thing is if you're going to seize assets from somebody, then they must be charged with a crime, and then those assets that are taken must be proven that they were directly as a result of the crime that was committed. Okay, if that can't be done, then those assets can't be seized.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, regardless of why or who they're seized from. Okay, I don't care if it's cartel. I don't care if it's Joe Smuckatelli down the road.
Who?
Okay, the due
Joe
process
Joe
must be
Facitelli?
followed, and when it's not,
Joe Smuckatelli.
then we open ourselves up to other infringements.
Yeah. And I get where Trippy's going with all of this. I mean, the intention is perfect. It's the function. It's the carryover, the carry on, I should say. Carry on effects, the consequences down the road. If it isn't done perfectly, and 9 out of 10, it's not, because as Mike is pointing out, the laws that we have right now in place aren't functioning properly. So
Right.
it only magnifies the problem when you magnify the amount.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we wanted to address that. Now, let's see. We've talked a little bit tonight. We got, oh God, we're at 2 hours already. So we're pretty much done, but we've broken through 300. I believe we may have had the most people watching this live consecutively ever. Thank you, everyone. Right after the State of the Union. Gotta love that. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That's always important.
But that's okay. So Trippy brings up a point here.
Yep.
Okay. With transparent government, there shouldn't be an issue. The problem is there's no government that is completely transparent. None
Well,
whatsoever.
Yeah, we're becoming transparent.
Okay.
We're not there.
There are aspects of government that will become transparent under Trump, but I guarantee not all of government will be transparent. Okay.
Yeah.
And anytime you have a bureaucracy, especially one as large as ours, it's impossible to have complete transparency.
Well, yeah, you
So
have to
there
remember,
will be issues.
there's
There
one
will
of
be corruption.
this is one of the things that I always love when I hear people who are big government people always talk about, we need more government, we need more government, we need more government. As if government is this omnipotent being that is infallible, when government is really just comprised of people, the most fallible creature on the face of the planet. So as long as you have people involved, you're going to have something wrong, whether it's malfeasance, corruption, stupidity, incompetence, whatever it is. You can't put your faith and trust in government, because government is nothing more than fallible individuals. So, oh, it's a puppy.
Puppy alert. Yeah,
Well,
I know. He's telling me I gotta go. But
All right.
That's right. I got 3 of my own sitting here looking at me because I was outside doing the show from outside and they were inside.
Yeah,
Got
I
my
got
chocolate
one
milk.
down here on the floor behind me.
But they have no, and it's like, and you can't guarantee that no government is going to is not going to become tyrannical. That's
Right.
one of the famous things that happened between Lily Tang Williams and was it not Harry Sisson? It was what's his face, David Hogg.
Oh God.
Like when
Yeah.
she was there at the debate, and she goes, "Can you guarantee me that our government will never become tyrannical?" And he's like, "Well, I can't guarantee you that any government would not become tyrannical."
And that's why we have a Second Amendment.
And that's why we have a Second Amendment.
Yep.
Yes, Canada, take notice.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Huh? No, I know they're meant. That's fine. Thank you.
No, Grace, that was real chocolate milk. That was this was my favorite. The only real chocolate for chocolate milk is Fox's You Bet chocolate syrup. It's kosher.
Oh, is that right?
Followed by Bosco. Bosco is number 2. Hershey's is number 3. But Fox's You Bet chocolate syrup is the world's greatest chocolate syrup. I suggest you check them out. They've been around for over 100 years.
Where was I? Oh, that's you threw me off with the chocolate milk. I was going to say the Second Amendment.
Throws everybody off
Second
with the
Amendment.
chocolate milk, of
The
course.
Second Amendment is like the critically important thing, and I was glad to see that the case that Mexico brought against the gun manufacturers. It looks like it's going to be almost a unanimous decision to throw the case out. That looks good. I mean, the predictions are anywhere between 7-2 against. So again, like against Mexico.
Well,
so for dropping
after
9-0. So
after the last judgment they made about having to spend $2 billion on some of the projects that Doge uncovered, having a 5-4 verdict on that.
That irritates me. Okay, because that case should have been argued that U.S. aid was unconstitutional to begin with. So, as a result, it shouldn't have been getting the money that it was getting.
Well, it should have never even gone to court because the executive branch has control over the spending.
Right.
In any executive branch office, which that is. It's their discretion whether or not it was voted on or not, and it wasn't voted on. This was expenditures that were made by bureaucracies that should have never even gone into court. Why the Supremes decided they would take that up, I have no idea. But I think we should cover that next week on another exciting edition of the Weekly Roundtable.
This might be interesting for next week as well. Grace has brought it up. No, these are bills that are currently being considered. I think this is in New York State. No felony murder for those under 25, which I think is insane.
Bullshit.
That's a stupid idea. And the other one is no one between 18 to 21 can have a gun except if they're hunting, which is a violation of the Second Amendment. And I absolutely oppose that. And I think everyone here opposes that.
Yeah, so let's just turn around and make sure that none of our military service people are ever given the right to a firearm. Meanwhile, we have states. We just had a federal judge just strike down the 21 rule.
Yeah,
saying that insisting that somebody be 21 when 18 is the majority age. It's unconstitutional to deny that person a handgun.
Yeah.
I was at work today. I'm going to give you a quick story real quick. I was at work today and I had a woman come in and I'm in North Carolina. She comes in and she says her daughter moved to New York City about 6 months ago where she's going to school. Uh-huh. And she's frightened for her daughter because she has to ride the train 3 or 4 times a day in order to go back and forth to classes, and her dormitory, which is owned by the school but is on a different part of the island, was asking about what she could do to better defend herself. Her daughter's 18.
Yeah.
18, living alone in New York City, and mace is illegal.
Yep.
Pepper spray is illegal.
Yep.
Stun guns are illegal. Pocket knives over a certain size, like this one, are illegal. She can't have a firearm. And her dorm tells her that even if she was 21, she can't have a firearm in her room because it's a gun-free policy. But
Yep.
when asked I asked her, it says, can the school guarantee your daughter's safety? They said the best they do is if somebody comes to the building, they hold on to that person's ID until they leave. That's the best they could do.
Yeah.
If you are 18 years old and you don't have a right to defend yourself, why are you voting?
Well, here's the problem that I have with number one, arbitrary age qualifications. Because there are people that have petitioned to be considered an adult, even though they are under the age of 18. They have emancipated themselves. Okay? Because they aren't of a specific age, they don't have the right to be able to defend their domicile. Okay,
Yeah.
even though in every other way they are considered an adult.
Well, Joel brings up this question, and I don't mean to interrupt while he was saying it, and I know we're getting late. There's a firearm product called a Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. It's a CO2-powered pepper ball gun. It shoots either pepper balls, a stun ball, or something. It's a 68 caliber ball, like in paintball, all right?
Right. They also have solid
this,
projectiles.
we sell those. The woman asked if she could buy one of them. It says it's legal in all 50 states. However, it's not legal in New York City.
Yep.
Because it's a CO2 powered projectile firing weapon. Even though it's non-lethal, it's still considered a weapon.
Yeah.
So I made certain suggestions on how the young lady could defend herself that may or not be looked at favorably by certain powers that be, but like I tried to explain to her, if my daughter is in a position where she needs to be defended and can't defend herself, I will burn the fucking ground to a cinder to defend my child myself. There is nothing I wouldn't do to defend my daughter.
Yeah.
And there's nothing my daughter wouldn't do to defend herself because she's tough. Sometimes when you look at these laws and you look at how they're written, you have to ask yourself, who's writing them and why? Why are they preventing an 18-year-old young lady from defending themselves?
Yeah.
Why? And they cannot give you the reason why. They can't give you the reason why, but they will tell you that your first duty is to retreat. Your first duty is to retreat. You're being attacked. It's your responsibility to run, hide, and then fight. And then when they ask you, well, how do you fight? They tell you, grab the nearest thing you could use as a weapon. How about letting people have the weapon first so they don't have to run and they don't have to hide and they don't have to retreat? Because if you give them the weapon and you allow them to defend themselves, you know what will happen? They won't have to fight either because nobody will pick the fight with them. An armed society is a polite society.
Yep.
Very much so. Again, it's running short. I want to talk more about this because I think it's important. And
We
having
can
the 25, I have such a problem. When we start putting these age limits on the execution of law, it's just another way of saying the law doesn't exist. It doesn't apply. It's anarchy. We're picking and choosing which law applies and who applies to. Oh, black people can't be arrested for some of the violations like the BLM riots. Oh, no, black, you're on the right side of the law. No.
14th Amendment.
It's everyone is
equal
treated
protection
under the law.
Yeah.
Yep.
But everyone gets equal punishment under the law too. And laws must be enforced for them to have any impact, to be
now,
worthwhile.
If there's equal protection under the law, then any exemption that you allow in a law invalidates that law based on the 14th Amendment.
Yep.
Okay. Any arbitrary age that you put on a law invalidates that law under the 14th Amendment, because then it is no longer equal protection.
Right.
Again, this is a much bigger issue. We definitely should delve into it more. I have a lot of problems with it, both of those issues. But
Well, just you know why where the 25 is coming from? Obamacare.
Yeah.
Because Obamacare took your children, instead of making them adults at 18, made them adults at 24. So
Yeah.
now it's not too much of a stretch
No.
to go to 25.
Under
That says-
Obamacare, it's 26.
Yeah.
No, 26.
be
I'm
on.
sorry. Yeah, so you can't charge a child with capital murder because it's a 25-year-old child. It's a 25-year-old child.
It'll be
All right,
a
listen,
New
guys,
York
I'm getting out of here. My dogs are all sitting there, their eyes are crossed, their legs are crossed, and so am mine.
yeah,
right.
We'll catch you guys next week. Love you guys. Listen, everybody that joined us tonight, thank you very much for being here. We really do appreciate you. Come back in anytime you want. Hopefully next weekend we'll have the phones open, because I'll be back in my studio and back at the mixing board. So
that would be nice.
until then, you guys will be safe, shoot straight, and we'll catch you there next weekend. Go next Wednesday.
Thanks,
There you
Frank.
go.
Next week.
Good night, guys.
Right.
There you go.
Right, Frank.